All right. While we're waiting for everyone to join, good morning, everyone. While we're waiting for everyone to join, we will go ahead and launch a poll question up. We'd love to see, where you're joining from and which segment of our agenda today you're most excited about. All right, we'll give it maybe another minute or so for everyone to join. All right. It looks like the numbers have slowed down a little bit on people coming in. Why don't we go ahead and show the poll results? All right, we've got quite a mix of people, even some from out of state. And it looks like most people are excited about participating in our MLK Day of Service. Fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to LA Works' Martin Luther King Day of Service. My name is Renee, and I'll be your moderator for today. I also wanted to introduce my colleague, Karina, who is managing all the Zoom behind the scenes magic today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karina. I'm very happy to be here. Very happy that all of us are joining us today. All of you are joining us today, and I'm very excited to get started.
Fantastic. So today is the 26th anniversary of the National Day of Service that celebrates the life and legacy of Dr. King. It's a day on and not a day off, where everyone is encouraged to volunteer and support the community. So thank you for making the time to be here, ready to learn and do some good. To kick things off, here are a few words from the chair of our board, Bob Johnson.
Hi, welcome to LA Works MLK Day of Service. I'm Bob Johnson, the chair of the board of directors of LA Works. I want to thank you for joining us today for what is the 26th annual National Day of Service in commemoration of Dr. King's life and legacy and his commitment to social justice. We know that we're living in crazy times, our lives have been turned upside down, and that more than ever, we need to have each other's backs, that we need to come together for the common good of the community. And that's what LA Works has been doing for the past 30 years, bringing together hundreds of thousands of volunteers, trying to make Los Angeles a more livable and more humane city. It's what Dr. King referred to as a community. We have a great lineup of activities for you today. I know you're going to enjoy the virtual March on Washington, where you're going to meet some civil rights heroes and experience that era. We have some fabulous virtual workshops on race and other important social issues that I think you'll find enriching. And that's just today. We have a full calendar of events every month. There's a little something for everybody, so I invite you to check it out. And lastly, I want to extend a special thank you to our staff who worked incredibly hard, our executive director, Debbie Brucci, our board of directors, our corporate partners, our community partners. And again, thank you for helping us make today possible. We know that the road to change, to social change, starts individually with each of us. And we invite you to join us on that journey. Again, I look forward to seeing you soon in person, and if not in person, virtually. So have a great MLK Day.
Well said, Bob. Thank you so much. We'd also like to take this time to thank all of our sponsors for supporting us today. And a special shout out to our corporate volunteers from Northrop Grumman and NBC Universal who are here with us today. Everyone wave. We're so glad to have you all here with us. Before we move on, we just wanted to cover some quick Zoom housekeeping. We encourage you to turn your cameras so we can all see your lovely faces, but you're all muted. So please put your questions in the chat as they come up, and we will do our best to get to them during the Q&A portion with our speakers. And if you're having any sort of technical difficulties connected to audio or visual, please visit our Participate course page and you can watch the live stream from there. And finally, please remember, because of the virtual format of today, it is quite possible we could experience some technical difficulties. So I want to encourage you to approach these moments with patience and understanding. We really appreciate it. So today is a day about giving back and having fun. That's what we're all here to do. It's a day for us to come together to show that our country and community is full of caring individuals like yourselves, committed to making the world a better place, a place that can realize the dream of the civil rights leader we are honoring today. So thank you again for joining us. Let's give ourselves a silent round of applause for being here today. Fantastic. And if you're one of those cool cats on social media, remember to tag us while you're sharing your experiences throughout this virtual day of service. Use the hashtag MLK Day. Thank you. And before we head into our programming, I'm going to do a quick overview of the agenda for today. Today's workshop is broken down to 3 main sections. First, we'll hear from our fabulous panel of speakers with a wide range of experience to talk about the relationship between food insecurity and race and how Black Americans are disproportionately affected. For part 2, we have the lovely Lyric Kelker from Inclusive Action, who will be leading us through an advocacy action to help promote more long-term policy change. Today, we'll be focusing specifically on the implementation of the Good Food Zone. And last but not least, we've set aside some time for everyone to assemble sack lunches before we all head out to the drop-off location. We'll review the instructions and what each bag should contain, as well as the drop-off instructions. For those of you headed to the Midnight Mission, I did want to clarify that they do accept donations after 11 a.m., so you can make your drop-offs just the same after this meeting. So there's no need to stress. Apologies if the instructions are not clear in the emails. All right, I think that covers the overview. Without further ado, let's hear from our panelists. We'll go ahead and get things started off by giving our panelists a chance to introduce themselves. So the first question is just, tell us about yourself. How do you define food insecurity, and what kind of work are you involved in to help address it? Cameron, do you want to go ahead and get us started?
Hi, I'm so excited to be here with all of you. This is such an amazing day, and I get to spend it with such awesome people from apparently throughout our wonderful state and throughout the country. So that's really excited. And so I'm very, very, very happy to be here. Once again, my name is Cameron Mims Jones. I work with Nourish California. We're a statewide organization here in California that fights for food for low-income Californians. Food insecurity is like, the bedrock of our organization, which began in the 90s. I define food insecurity as an inconsistent, it's inconsistent, interrupted access to nutritious and affordable foods. And our work is really centered around how we can expand our safety net programs like CalFresh and other benefits to reach all of Californians and all people who are struggling with hunger. My work really right now has been centered on the older adult space. and in particular, older Black and Brown California, low-income Californians, and getting them access to food. And I'm really excited to talk about my work and get some good questions from you all. And once again, I'm so excited to be sharing this time with as many of you as I see on such a wonderful day. So thank you.
You want me to jump in?
Jump on in.
Hi, everybody. I'm Arnold. I'm the president and CEO of the Midnight Mission in downtown Los Angeles. The Midnight Mission was founded addressing food insecurities. It was founded really as a soup kitchen in Los Angeles in 1914. So we've been around for 105 years. And originally, and how we got our name is we were founded by a lay preacher who was also a grocer. So he would do his grocery business during the day, and then in the evenings, he would invite people who were out on the streets to come in and listen to him preach. And he promised that if they would come listen to him, that he would feed them. Well, he was a long talker, and they typically eat till midnight. So the community actually named our organization because it was about midnight when they got to eat. So they started talking about going to the Midnight Mission. Well, we moved away from the preaching aspects in about 1924 and have been focused on providing food and services to people who are experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles ever since that point in time. So we run a 271 bed homeless program right in Skid Row. You can see the building behind me. One of the things that I am very, very proud of is that it's an organization that understands the complexity of homelessness and the complexity of the solution. And we have an incredibly service-rich environment. So we have a school on site. We have a career center on site. We have a medical and mental health clinic on site. We have dental services, in addition to the typical residential and case management services that help people find a way to transition from street living back into a home of their own. And we've been involved in food distribution, as I've mentioned, literally from the beginning. We have a massive street feeding program where every meal, at least pre-COVID, we were serving over 1 million meals a year to people experiencing homelessness. We also participate in grocery giveaways. So we're a little bit of a food bank in the sense that people can come to us, and if they need grocery supplies, we give them a bag full of groceries. And we don't limit who we serve simply to people who are experiencing homelessness. Anyone who is low income and needs help addressing food insecurity knows they can come to us and leave with, if not a meal, a grocery bag full of food that can stock their kitchen. And if I were to say how I define food insecurity, it's a lack of resources and access that helps you not worry about where your next meal is coming from. And I think a lot of Los Angeles deals with that. So many of you may know we have a big volunteer program when we're not under COVID restrictions. And I encourage you, if you haven't, wait until we reopen our volunteer program up and come down and serve a meal or two with us. And it's a wonderful experience with a wonderful organization. So thank you for having me. Thanks to LA Works, who has worked with us for so long. We love you, and we're very, very happy to be here with you.
Thank you, Mike. Last but not least, we've got Ronell from the LA Food Policy Council. Take it away.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ronell Hampton. I am a policy manager with the Los Angeles Food Policy Council. But for me, myself, individually, I'm an urban sustainability planner, and my focus is policy and urban design. So in my position at Los Angeles Food Policy Council, I lead the policy development work, as well as our brick and mortar transformation projects for our Healthy Neighborhood Market program. So Los Angeles Food Policy as an organization works to make sure that food is accessible, sustainable, affordable, and sustainable, accessible for all of Los Angelinos. And so with that, we are working in multiple fronts. Like I said, with policy development, that's more of our policy focus. And we use a collective impact approach to make sure that impacted people are leaders and collaborators in these conversations around the changes that are needed around policy in their communities. On the programmatic front, we have our Food Leaders Lab. We also have our Healthy Neighborhood Market program, which I mentioned, which really works with our neighborhood market stores to increase their ability to offer healthier food options in what communities that have been defined as food deserts, which we say are communities experiencing food apartheid. So in regards to what food security means or how that is defined, to me, food insecurity is really defined to me when all people do not have equitable access to healthy food options. And this is reflective in the health impact and outcomes that people have. And you see this very prevalent in Black and brown communities with diabetes, stroke, heart disease, etc. And really, it's important to acknowledge how that's reflective of what's available in the built environment. So food insecurity, to me, is reflective of what's available in the built environment through infrastructure design, through how wide our streets are, how much air is available, the quality of that air, the quality of green space, etc. So those all play into food insecurity.
Wow. Thank you for all those fantastic introductions. You guys clearly cover a wide range of experience and are doing a lot of great work. So thank you for that. Before we move on to our next question, we have another poll question. This one is about food insecurity. So the county of Los Angeles is a population of about 10 million. How many people in LA County do you think are food insecure? We'll give it a couple seconds for everyone to respond, make their best guesses. All right, drum roll, please. And the answer is no, you guys were on the dot. Most of you guys got it right. The correct answer is in fact 2 million, so about 1 in 5 Angelinos. So if you think about it this way, if everybody in this Zoom was representative of LA County, there's about 200 of us. That means that 50 of us are currently experiencing some degree of food insecurity. So it really makes you think. The next question for our panelist is, what is another key statistic that we might find surprising? And can you share the significance or implications of that statistic? Just help us put that in context. Cameron, do you want to go first again? Oh, she needs to be unmuted. Oh. One more time.
Sorry, I was doing that thing that we do with the door. Unlock. No, you unlock. No, I unlock. We're doing that with the mute button. I thank you all, and I'm so glad to be once again. Awesome. It makes me further excited to be a part of this panel, hearing the work, and obviously I'm familiar with all of your organizations. LA Food Policy Council is doing the work. Love it. Everyone who works there is amazing. People really fighting the fight. Obviously, the Midnight Mission is doing it, and I think that one of the things that freaks me out. I should use the term is reactionary. Shocking statistic for me in my work is that I work, like I said, with older adults. My space is really working with policy that fights hunger within our older adult space in California. And one thing that I think I found shocking was we have about a less than 20% participation rate for all older adults who are eligible for CalFresh, meaning SNAP, our SNAP program. That's the participation rate in California. It's one of the worst participation rates in the state, in the country, for CalFresh. The reason why it's shocking to me is, for those of you who are not familiar with SNAP, our supplemental nutrition program. It is the greatest tool that we have to end hunger as a country. The SNAP benefit on the EBT card, it allows for people to purchase the foods that they want, culturally responsive, all of those things. And that our older adults, that there's only 20%, less than 20% of our older adults within our state participating in that program, when we know the significant amount of food insecurity that exists within that population, is really shocking to me. And my work around a lot of our work is figuring out what barriers to access to these entitlements, programs that are codified within our Constitution to alleviate these social issues, hunger being one of them. And so I think some of them we have bureaucratic issues that come up, access to language access issues to these programs, people not understanding. There's been as we know, we've had an administration that's not been very friendly. I'm being kind right now on the day of MLK, and we are supposed to be trying to change the narrative, right? So has not been very friendly to our immigrant brothers and sisters. And so there's people not wanting to participate in programs because of fear of being removed from their home. So there's those things. And we fight, our organization works in those spaces of bureaucracy, while we have people like organizations like LA Food Policy Council, who are galvanizing the support of the people who these issues are affecting. We are trying to, my organization is in the state legislators, talking to people and trying to convince them in with words that they understand, that they should help, get out of the way of access to these programs for members of our community. So that is, I think, for me, it has been in the work, one of the most significant statistics that frustrates me, because I know that it's an entitlement program that works, and that so many of our older adults are not, especially our Black and brown older adults, are not having access to that. Really, 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 really affects me, and is a significant part of my work, is figuring out ways to make sure that stops, and creating new avenues of access to funds for food.
That's really shocking. I think, the fact that these programs actually exist and the problem is access, that I can only imagine how much more frustrating that is. So thank you for pointing that out. Mike or Ronell, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. Like I was saying earlier, I really think that when we're talking about what we're experiencing, we have to look at the built environment. We have to look at policy and how it's designed. Quickly, I just want to share a slide. One second. But a cool fun fact, Martin Luther King and I are part of the same fraternity. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And Martin Luther King left us a lot of jewels, but right before he transcended, he really went into poverty.
At the same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farm. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the Black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
Listen.
And that's important to point out. And I wanted to point it out. And hear it in his words, because when we're looking at the disparities of statistics, the one that I'm showing here is the median household wealth for whites, Hispanics, and Blacks. You see that whites are at 134,000 median income and Blacks are at 11,000 median income. When we look at how that is possible, okay, we have to look at how that was facilitated through race-based policy creation that was facilitated by our local governments as well as our federal government. And that is what facilitated this disparity that we're witnessing in our day-to-day lives, that we're seeing on this slide, and that we just heard from Martin Luther King himself. A lot of the race-based policies that Martin Luther King was speaking about in this clip are still entrenched and codified in the ways that our cities run, in the zoning plans and policies that facilitated where economic opportunity exists, where schools are located, etc. When we're looking at what we need to do to fix it, one powerful statement Martin Luther King said is, when we go to Washington, we're going to get our check. This is why I'm using the narrative-based strategy approach to center impacted people as leaders and collaborators in the policy changes that need to happen. For too long, expertise has been indicated by economic opportunity. Expertise has been indicated by race. Expertise has been indicated by gender. But with the narrative-based strategy approach, we are leveraging the collective impact model to make sure experience is used as an indicator of expertise, so that marginalized communities and their experiences can be leveraged as information, as context to understand how to approach policy, and as a way to identify the solutions that are needed to transform our communities to what we want them to be. Oftentimes, organizations are coming in with the best intentions, right? They have the best ideas, but they're coming into our communities for a sign-off. And with the collective impact approach that we try to lead at LAFPC and the narrative-based strategy approach that I introduced since I've been there, it really ensures that we are working with communities to develop policy and not for communities exclusively. We need to work with communities to facilitate the transformations that they want to see. They have the solutions, they need the resources, they need the policies to help them facilitate those resources. And that will change these outcomes that we're seeing when we're talking about economics, which will then give people the ability to facilitate better academics, which will then give people the ability to facilitate better health outcomes. So I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Ronell. It's great to see sort of how everything is all sort of interconnected and one thing leads to another, and how everything is sort of just all tied together. And definitely appreciate you bringing in Dr. King's words specifically today. So thank you for sharing that. Last but not least, Mike.
Thank you, and thank you, Ronell. I mean, one of the things that I think is really apparent when you see those clips is really appreciate what a talented communicator Dr. Martin Luther King was. He could make points very clearly and very quickly that just brought facts to bear on the magnitude of the problem, and it was really powerful. So I really appreciate that as well. So I'm gonna go in a little bit of a different direction. I'm gonna embrace a statistic that most of you will probably be surprised about, and that is there are more food distribution programs in Skid Row than anywhere else in Illinois. And the reason I raise that as a statistic, because I suspect most of you are surprised by that based on the number of people who want to bring food to Skid Row. We do not need it. So here is the issue that we run into in Skid Row. So we have 4 missions that offer food programs to anybody who's on the street. And as I mentioned, we serve 1,000 when it was busy, we served 1,000 meals a meal. We never turn anyone away. We provide grocery bags. And there are 3 other missions that are downtown. as well as other things like the Hippie Kitchen, which serves food. But what happens is that people look for ways to address something they can understand, and food insecurity is something that people understand. But we have a terrible time matching where the need is with where people want to take food. And what happens when food comes to Skid Row, nobody's really hungry because they all know where to go to get food. So half of the food that comes to Skid Row ends up dumped on the streets and contributes to the public health issues that exist. So my encouragement is for folks who want to participate in food service programs, try and find somewhere in your local communities, because there are a lot of places around LA County where food insecurity and people are hungry and need to be fed. But we have the same thing with food services as we have with homeless services. And that is, there's this NIMBYism that goes, we used to run a food service truck, and what we would do is we would take food that we would cook in our kitchens. We had the truck set up so that it would keep it food safe. And we would go out to areas in LA County that we knew there were people who were hungry because there was no one around providing some food. And the communities were not very happy that we were feeding people experiencing homelessness in their community. And part of that is, you know, the notion that you're going to draw folks. But I do think that an opportunity we all have is, if you want to participate in food distribution in Skid Row, call us, call one of the other missions. We've got lots of opportunities to come participate in a structured environment that doesn't result in a lot of food ending up on the streets. And two, find someplace in your local community that can host a food program, because there are people literally everywhere in our county that are going hungry. And I think that one of the things I am hopeful that will come out of all of these conversations about food insecurity is maybe defining a system and network that can help us connect people who want to be part of a food distribution cycle with people who desperately need it, that are somewhere other than Skid Row.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, Cameron, did you want to follow up on something?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I've heard, but in particular, that last comment by Michael is really interesting to me, because I'm very, very concerned. I'm very consumed with this concept of rural parts of our state, and how that their experiences are very, very, can be similar to that of those minoritized people who look like us, who look like me, in urban parts of California. And that the experience of being left, sort of no one caring, lack of resources when there are things, but not being able to attach, that happens very attached to those services. That happens a lot in rural parts of our state. And there's sort of a disconnect, right? Where we have all of this, like Michael's talking about, all this food that comes to Skid Row, but then there's parts of our state. My mom lives in Ukiah. She's this Black woman in Ukiah. It's a very interesting experience for her. It's been very interesting. But because of that, I have access to parts of the state that I never would have. And when I go there and I experience and hear the people talking about this hunger, it's really interesting to think there's food sort of rotting in the streets in Los Angeles, but in the parts of Ukiah where people, rural parts of low-income rural Californians, who you would not necessarily identify with or think that are in need, but absolutely do. And their experiences are, if you close your eyes and you listen to those some of those communities, it sounds very much like communities that where I'm from, and people who look like me, their experiences too. So I think that that's always a struggle within California, recognizing that we have a very diverse state. It's huge, and there's a lot of different experiences, and we really do want to start thinking we are a statewide organization, which is why I think in state terms. But I think for volunteering purposes and as community members, recognizing that our areas are, our state is vast, and there's a lot of opportunities to service throughout the state.
Thank you. I think that just sort of highlights the fact that distribution can be just as big of a challenge as having the resources itself, access and resource distribution. So my next question was actually going to be, what are ways that volunteers can more mindfully engage? But it looks like Mike and Cameron, you guys, were right on top of it and sort of preempted that question a little bit and already sort of answered it. But Rondell, if you want to talk about, any advice that you have for volunteers who would like to, get more involved in issues surrounding race and food insecurity, whether that's a certain type of mindset that Mike sort of alluded to, or, approach to volunteering, or, specific organizations, whatever have you, would love to hear your thoughts.
Super quick before we jump into that, I just wanted to hop in and answer a question that's been getting asked in the chat. Because people are wondering if Skid Row doesn't really need food, and there's an issue with waste and the way that it's allocated. How come our lunches and our meals some of them are going to Midnight Mission? And so I just wanted to point out, and Mike, I'm sure you can talk a little bit more about this, but Midnight Mission does great work figuring out what are the places that need it most. And so you can rest assured that the food that you're donating will not contribute to the problem of misallocation.
And if I can just add to that, I mean, we planned for this. So knowing that there was going to be this event and that folks were going to be making sack lunches, our kitchen will sort of moderate the amount of food that they're preparing so that we can make sure that it's efficiently demonstrated. And I don't want people to feel like what happens in the volunteering and the bringing food it is not appreciated by those of us who are in Skid Row. It really is. I think the challenge that we have is how do we create the greatest impact with the activities that we have? And when you guys coordinate with us and bring down food, we're delighted. It makes our load a little bit lighter, and we really appreciate that. And I think there is an opportunity to try and expand and figure out how we can better connect with other communities so that we expand the impact. Because what I'm really interested in is when we do good work, we want that impact to have maximum effect. And I think the opportunity I see is how do we really see what we're doing and where we're doing it, and then drive that energy toward maximum effect. So I don't want people to misunderstand that we don't appreciate it, because we really do. It does help. But what doesn't help is pulling up in a van and handing out food out of the back of a van on 6th and San Pedro, because I can tell you everyone there has already had a meal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is good stuff. You bring up a good point. I think it's also, you brought up a good point when you said collaborating, Michael, coordinating with organizations and agencies. And I think one of the things that I really like to do is partnerships. Partnerships are very essential to making the dream work. I say teamwork makes the dream work. So partnerships are really key. Specifically around getting involved at LAF, Los Angeles Food Policy Council, we really love community engagement through the policy development front. And that is facilitated through our working groups that we convene. We usually have monthly meetings. Our general meetings will start back up in February. This month, we will be having our co-chair retreat. Last year, at the end of last year, we had our working group convening, which was a great opportunity for folks to learn what has happened all of last year in regards to our organizing. We have 5 active working groups. 3 of them I have the privilege of being a staff liaison on: the Urban Agriculture Working Group, the Food Waste Working Group, and the Good Food Economy Working Group. And you'll learn about ways that you can participate in direct action a little bit later. But just to talk about the involvement piece, coming to the meetings is a big component, but we really organized to make political changes. Last year, I'm happy to report that the organizing of the Good Food Economy Working Group resulted into the passing of the Good Food Zone policy at the council level. We are currently working to get the policy implemented. And that's a key word, y'all. We can get policies passed, but the truth is spoken once it's implemented, once you confirm that the impacted, the targeted demographic that you wanted to benefit from the policy is actually receiving the benefit. And that also goes through legislation and criminalization as well. Oftentimes you see a culprit, white supremacists, etc., they do a crime and there's new laws that come about and they disenfranchise communities of color. So that's important to think about when we're talking about policy implementation and the follow through and making sure that the right demographics are impacted and getting consequences or benefits from policies that are being facilitated. That's really important. So what I would recommend is getting involved. You can follow us on social media, Good Food LA at LA Good Food on Instagram. You can find us on goodfoodla.org. We have a lot of information. We released our Good Food Zone booklet, which really goes into detail of the work that we did last year in organizing. And it's really awesome to see that booklet because it's really the manifestation of the working group's work, the community's efforts, the community's interests, the community proposed solutions in regards to addressing food insecurity in South LA and other communities like Arleta Pacoima here in Los Angeles. So yeah, get involved, lean in, find us online, and let's change this world, make it a better place.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. That's, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I didn't want to interrupt your last sentence, whatever that was.
What was?
What I was gonna say was, Ronell, you're awesome. But by the way, but I also.
Oh my gosh, you are too, Cameron, and you are too, Mike. I'm super honored to be on this panel with you both. This is just great.
And I wanted to add on to what was awesome that what he was talking about was about policy, really policy to work and implementation, and that's really sort of our space where I don't do direct work. I don't get to see policies affect people every day, which is not personally impacts me because I'm a social worker by trade, and so I really would prefer to see the changes in everyone's life daily. But the work that we do, or we ask people to get involved, is really about getting the word out about bills, contacting their local legislators, getting active in the policy development that we do. We also facilitate focus groups and surveys and such, really trying to figure out what it is is there a problem? And if there's a problem, what are the solutions that the community, it's a community-led solution. So that's the sort of the work that we do. But that's one of the things when Michael was talking about the work that they do at Midnight Mission and tying in Ronell's work with the actual community, policy to practice within the community, getting solutions from the community. I sort of think about that, giving to charity and volunteering is absolutely what we need. It's a component of changing our society, but also in the policy and through law and the legislative process, we allow our values, and the value that we have is obviously if people are wanting to volunteer at Midnight Mission, if people are wanting to give and do all the things that we always want to do as Americans, as immigrants, as Black, as whoever, people who are listening, all the things that we hold that we want to do for the people who have less than us, we also want that to be reflected within the values of our laws and within the policy priorities that we have. And that's how we change societies. Charity is amazing, and that reflects absolutely who you are, the individual, and our community is. But our laws and the policies that we pursue are what that absolutely are the change, and they absolutely reflect those values. That charity value should be reflected within our policies and within the laws that we pass. And the only way that happens is if people who are on this call and family members are active in the legislative process within the state and obviously at the federal level. And so we send out alerts about our alert legislation. We have current legislation that's going to be coming out that's about getting easier access to older adults to SNAP, like I said, with the telephonic signatures, things that you would not imagine that are barriers. In this technological age that we have, you can send a tweet in 5 seconds, but it takes me months to get an plastic EBT card. That's ridiculous. So things like that, it probably infuriate you, but you all being tuned in to your representatives and to organizations that are trying to put policies to practice, getting involved in that process is absolutely part of democracy and a part of that. Like I said, having your values reflected in policy.
And I want to just add, so here's what I'm hearing. The desire to affect change has multiple layers to it. You've got organizations like us, which are boots on the ground. If you want to directly participate and see how serving food, helping to prepare food, can help people who need help. You come to the Midnight Mission, and we love that. And two, I think Ronell's point, one of the ways that we drive impact in doing our direct volunteering is through collaboration and coordination. I don't want to discourage anybody from doing sack lunches and then coordinating, because I can tell you there's not a homeless shelter in the county that wouldn't love to have you bring over sack lunches and make sure that it's the system in a way that ensures high impact. So and also volunteering, coming and cooking in our kitchen. We actually have a kitchen takeover process where if you've got a volunteer group and you want to do a meal, come take over our commercial kitchen. And you have a great time. And we know that the food gets used effectively because it's a normal part of the systems that exist in Skid Row. So there's all kinds of opportunities, I think, to reach out and participate with our organization or an organization that may be in your local community. And usually making a phone call is the first step of getting that started. So I want to encourage folks who are, who do love the volunteering. And I have to tell you, there is nothing more gratifying than, spending 2 years in a kitchen and then having somebody lean over the counter and say, thank you for helping me after a volunteering. I've never had anyone who's volunteered with us say, boy, what a terrible experience. They all leave 3 feet off the ground feeling great. And that is part of the beauty of what volunteer programs do, is help teach people the how volunteering feeds your soul.
Fantastic. Thank you everybody for your phenomenal responses. I'm not sure, we did get a question from the audience. This is directed to Karen. If one wanted to connect with the rural communities as a volunteer, what would be the best way to go about that?
It was about rural.
Yes, rural. Sorry.
I mean, it's exactly like Michael just said, that there are, contacting the local food banks in those areas, absolutely. Especially, so as I said, my work right now is very centered on our older adults in California, because as we know, COVID-19 has made isolation an issue. There is a significant amount of difficulties being an older adult. And when I'm saying older adult, I mean categorized as the 65 and older part of our population of our state. So in those rural communities, like I said, there are opportunities for volunteerism. It's just a lot more difficult, and you have to be a little bit more creative. But I know there's local food policy food councils in bigger cities, and I think right now I'm not sure, there are even in smaller communities, right? There's like the local food policy councils. Places like I use the example of Ukiah, which is in Mendocino County. That's a large. I mean, it's not small county. Like Ukiah is a small city in a large county. So there's a ton of food banks and a ton of opportunities. But I guess what I'm imploring us all to do as Californians, maybe who are living in the city, to start thinking when we're thinking about we're going to volunteer, to get more creative, I think, about locations potentially, thinking like San Bernardino, like places that are not our go-to thoughts about places in California, potentially, rural parts of our state. Need your help too.
I just want to add briefly on that. It's really about understanding your target demographic. There's so many people groups or targeted demographic like aging adults, right? Like are formerly incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very vulnerable demographic because, again, policy has made them nuclear when they come out. They don't have access to jobs, any public assistance programs, they can't go to school. So when we're talking about what support or getting creative, think about your loved ones that are struggling, the ones that you know from their personal experience. That's why the narrative-based strategy is super important, because you don't have to look far for the answer of what the challenges are. And you can go inside as far as what you believe the proposed solution should be and organize with your community, other impacted people to facilitate that outcome. But I really appreciate what Michael and Cameron were saying, because aging adults are formerly incarcerated, are women who are in domestic abuse relationships, who oftentimes are in these realities because of the security that it provides. So when we're talking about creating opportunities for security for these very vulnerable demographics, that I think the creativity is about going inside, figuring out about what has been your experience and how can you pull from your experience to find solutions to what needs to change.
Thank you, Ronell. Like the poll question that we just asked, 1 in 5 Angelinos, I did the math wrong, but there's about 200 of us, so that's 40 of us. So just remember to think about that. There's 40 of us on this call, statistically speaking, that are experiencing food insecurity. So thank you all to all of our panelists for these wonderful, thoughtful responses, very thought-provoking, and I hope it inspires everybody on this call to be more creative, like Cameron said, and do your research before you sign up and volunteer. We are very sorry that we weren't able to get to everybody's questions, but please head over to the discussion section of our participate page, and we can continue to have these very important conversations. There is only so much that we can cover in this workshop, and we've included, plenty of resources where everyone can learn more. The links that Ronell sent with the Good Food Zone booklet is also on that participate page. We've got articles, TED Talks, podcasts, as well as ongoing volunteer opportunities that you can sign up for. So please remember to visit the participate page and also follow all of our lovely panelists on their various social media platforms. So I'm gonna give everybody a round of applause for a wonderful guest speaking panel. Thank you so much. We are going to move on to the advocacy portion with Lyric from Inclusive Action. And I think a lot of our panelists already alluded to this, but volunteering addresses a sort of an immediate need, but it's also just as important to take a step back and look at the policies that affect these social issues. I would describe it as, if you have a leaky roof and you're using buckets to collect water, your floor is dry, which is very important, but you still have a leaky roof. So what you really need to do is fix the roof, but re-roofing is very expensive and time consuming. So I think similar logic applies to policy, which I think our panelists did a really good job of covering it. But before we hand things over to Lyric, we have another poll question. Since our advocacy call to actions today have to do with sharing and posting information on social media and other mediums, we wanted to ask, what is your preferred social media platform? We'll give everyone a minute to respond. All right, let's see. what our responses look like. Okay, so Instagram looks like the preferred platform, which is perfect because today we will certainly be using Instagram and other social medias. Very shocking, letter writing was not a popular response. Such a lost art. Anyway, Lyric, go ahead and take it away. In just a second, while we unmute her.
Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and good morning. And I'm really glad that we're able to be together and think about long-term change in terms of food insecurity across Los Angeles. So I do have a short presentation to give, like a little crash course on advocacy. And I think the way that Renee described it was really apt. Let me see. Oh, perfect. Okay. So I'm actually gonna kick it off. Okay, perfect. So this is the advocacy action section, and I'm gonna give you a little overview of different ways to make a difference. So on the next slide, I'm gonna kick it off a little bit with about inclusive action. So this is the organization that I work at. And it's a nonprofit economic development organization whose mission is to bring people together to build strong local economies that uplift low-income urban communities. And this is done through advocacy and transformative economic development initiatives. So our work focuses on those two major pillars: economic development initiatives and policy advocacy. I work on the policy advocacy side, and we pair these two together to change systems around things like access to capital, and in turn, access to other necessary basics like food and housing. One of the things we're most known for is the campaign to legalize sidewalk vending in Los Angeles. So sidewalk vendors often fill gaps in food and service needs in their neighborhoods, and often they're the only source of fresh and healthy food where they work. So I'll go more into this in a very important policy in a little bit, but first I want to give a very brief crash course on advocacy. So next slide, please. First, I want to name that there are different ways to advocate at multiple points within a policy process and very much outside of policy altogether. So you've heard from the incredible professionals today that there are different areas of advocacy. The three you see here are the way that I tend to think about the different ways to advocate, but even this is limited and doesn't really cover the whole range of things that you can do. I tend to think about it in three buckets. So there's direct service, policy advocacy, and prevention. Direct service is providing the goods and services to people who don't have access to resources. And then this is what you're doing later today, actually, with making lunches and giving the food directly to folks who are unhoused and food insecure. So the next is policy advocacy. And the way I think about this is changing the policy to make sure that people don't have access, to make sure that people do have access to resources. This is about changing the material circumstances of people right now. And then the other major component is prevention. And to me, prevention is ensuring that people don't fall into a situation where they don't have access and resources. So this is making sure that our systems truly support people so they aren't in a situation where they are food insecure. But again, this is just how I think about it and helps me figure out what the best strategy is for further change. So that brings me to my next point on the next slide. There are many ways to do your advocacy, whatever line of work it might be. Here are three ways that are very tangible and an easy way to help build your solidarity with other people and coalitions who have been doing this work for a long time. The first listed here is social media. So we just had a poll, but this is a really great way to push policy and raise awareness about an issue. And you can use all those different platforms that were in the poll. The next is letter writing or making phone calls. This can be done to elected officials, this can be to voters, it can even be to organizations or companies who are doing some of this work. And then the last I have listed here is direct action. So direct action involves people disrupting business as usual, whether it's in a public space or an economic institution. This is like the very necessary protest that happened last June in Los Angeles, but this can also be something like a boycott, a sit-in, a teach-in, or many other things. But this is just a few different strategies of advocacy. The options are frankly quite endless. So figuring out what makes most sense for you and doing what makes you happy is really important. And also really important is doing this work with others. We heard the other panelists talk a lot about partnerships and the importance of collaboration, and I really can't stress that enough. In Los Angeles, there are so many people working on almost any issue you can think of. So finding a group you align with and working together is really, it's a really integral piece of advocacy. And this actually brings me to my last point in the crash course. So next slide. Make sure to take care of yourself. The topics that we talk about, stuff like food insecurity and lack of housing, they can be really heavy and can be hard to wrap your head around, especially if you haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it and learning about it like the folks you're hearing today. So make sure you use the skills you have in coalition with other people to move policy forward, but resting and taking the time you need to recuperate is just as important as getting the work done. We can only do great work if we ourselves are taken care of. So that was a lot of information fit into just a few very short slides. So now that you've gotten this quick few-minute crash course, I do want to take this information and put it a little bit into action. On the next slide, you heard my colleague earlier, Ronell, talk about the Good Food Zone policy. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this policy and why it's so important. So the Good Food Zone policy works at the intersection of access to food and economic development. Histories of racist zoning laws and historical disinvestment through policies like redlining have led to food desert and food swamp areas. The Good Food Zone policy looks to change that. And through this policy actually was already passed back in March of last year. But we do want to increase access and demand for healthy food in food desert communities through culturally relevant practices. And we also want to promote economic development through food entrepreneurship, business acumen, and technical assistance. So this is for food businesses as small as sidewalk vendors, all the way to folks like food distributors. So investing in food businesses is one way we can actively combat existing food insecurity, build wealth for communities that have been disinvested in, and also prevent food insecurity in the future for neighborhoods that lack access to healthy and affordable foods. So as I mentioned, it did already pass in March of 2020, but now we're trying to get it implemented and make sure that it works the way that it was intended. The city needs a little bit of, the city of LA needs a little bit of a push to help make that happen. And we really think this is more important now than like any other time because of COVID and how food systems are actually becoming much more localized and hyper-localized because people need to stay home and stay within their neighborhood. And so that means we're effectively harming whole communities when we're cutting off further access. And that's why the Good Food Zone is so important, is to help make sure and build the capacity for local neighborhoods to be able to have healthy food access and build wealth for different businesses in these traditionally disinvested areas. So now on the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about taking action. We're going to put all of the information in the last few minutes that you've heard into action. So we're going to use the strategies of advocacy and policy prevention and do some social media and some public comment files, and then also information for making phone calls during the week or maybe tomorrow or the next day if you feel so inclined. And this is all going to be around the Good Food Zone because, as I mentioned, it does need a little bit of, they need a little bit of a push and an urge to make it go forward because they already made it a priority by passing it, but now it's kind of stuck in the different bureaucratic systems to make sure that it does move forward. So on the next slide, I do have a link, and I can also drop it in the chat. This is a toolkit. Oh, sorry. I can't send it to everybody, but that link will take you directly to a toolkit where it gives you instructions on how to post to social media with a little caption and an image for you to download. And then the second major thing is leaving a comment to the council file. And this is really important because it actually puts it in a public facing place that you're interested in moving this work forward. You can click on the links at the very top of the toolkit, excuse me, and it'll take you directly to what you want to be doing. So the first one is social media, and it gives all of the social media information, it gives Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for your council members. And you can, once you scroll past the information to see, their Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, it actually gives the information about the post. So you post it to Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. It has the content all there, but don't forget to tag your council member. And then you can click on the image to download it and post it yourself.
All right, let's give everybody maybe, 10-ish minutes to go ahead and follow the instructions in the toolkit to post stuff on social media, and even maybe get to submit a comment to the council file. And let's, reconvene at 10. It's 10:08 now, so let's aim for like 10:17. How does that sound?
Yeah, I think that's great. I also wanted to add, while people are doing this, the link has been sent out to the chat, so everyone should have access to it now. And so while people are engaging in this, I did receive a question, and I think maybe you can answer it in the meantime, Lyric. Somebody was asking about redlining and kind of like what does that mean? What kind of implications it has. So if you want to elaborate a little bit on that as we continue to do the homework that you've kind of assigned for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic question. So redlining actually stems from the 1930s. So about a century ago, there was an agency called the Homeowners Loan Corporation, and they took all of the major cities across the United States and divvied them up into areas graded A through D about whether or not they should be invested in. So they're effectively like zones throughout all of the different cities across the country, Los Angeles, of course, being one of them, where they said A was the best area to invest, and D, which was a red color, it was literally red, was the worst area to invest. And they were drawn along explicitly racial lines. So the folks who were Jewish, Black, Latinx, Native, pretty much any community of color, if they lived in an area, it was typically considered redlined, and it was the people were, or investors were told to not invest in those areas, and that was a policy. That was like a direct policy by the U.S. federal government. And there have been like really strong implications through time of what that has turned into. So that meant both for home loans, and it also meant for business loans as well. And you can actually see remnants of it in different areas. So Leimert Park is a really interesting case in Los Angeles where, so I talked about sidewalk vending earlier. Leimert Park, the park itself, still has a covenant in it saying that you can't do commercial business in that area, but it's within a suite of other covenants that are tied to now outlawed racially charged investment in terms of not allowing for Jewish or Black folks to be able to own a home in those areas. So it has very long-lasting implications, because now in Leimert Park, sidewalk vendors technically aren't allowed to vend there because of that covenant that sits within the suite of other racial covenants that stem actually from redlining.
Wow, thank you. That was excellent to know that context and to know the history of where, the policies that have, that continue to have an impact on the communities today. I think you said, when was this passed? Like a century ago?
Yeah, it's from the 1930s and 40s when it was really active, and then it was actually outlawed, I believe in the 70s, 60s or 70s. But the implications of it are very strong. And if you actually look at a redlining map now and then compare it to neighborhoods currently, you'll see that it had very strong indications, because racially, the city of Los Angeles is still kind of segregated in the same way that it was in the 1930s, or in a similar fashion, not in the exact same way, but a very similar fashion.
Interesting. I think this really, your slide about how taking care of yourself through this process is especially important, because this is clearly, a long process, policy change, and policy implementation. There's also, certain disconnect there. This is a whole process that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort from, a lot of people. This like community advocacy portion of it. So thank you for that context.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so while we continue this, I know we have a couple more minutes of doing this, this direct action. If anybody else has questions about what Lyric discussed that you would want to share now so that she can dive a little bit more into it, definitely please feel free to send that in the chat, and we can talk about that as you do this very important work. Okay, so one of the first questions we have right now asks, how is gentrification impacting the implementation of policies? Are gentrified areas getting implemented faster?
That's a fantastic question, and I think it kind of depends on the policy. So for the Good Food Zone, we are looking at a handful of different factors, gentrification being one of them, and trying to figure out where is the most need. And it might, like, typically we find that there's a disconnect between new residents and what existed in a community long term. And what we're really trying to do is build wealth and policy around serving the folks who have been in neighborhoods for a very long time. With the history of redlining and disinvestment, that means that the businesses that are there didn't get the resources that they needed. And we want to be able to bring those businesses, up to speed and be able to have them benefit from any, benefit from the changes in economics or demographic changes that might be happening in the area. But the specific focus is on building wealth for the legacy businesses and the folks who have been doing the work or been in the neighborhood for a really, really long time, so that we're not contributing, or we're doing our we're trying to mitigate the impacts of gentrification. There are other policies where sometimes it might be targeted specifically at something like anti-displacement, which is like the other side of gentrification. And then there are even other policies that might speed up gentrification. So a lot of them are around housing, or they could be around transit. And there's been many, many studies that talk about what infrastructure actually contributes to gentrification. And unfortunately, it's a lot of infrastructure. So I don't know if that answers your question totally, but the onus of the Good Food Zone is to help with anti-displacement and help build wealth with different businesses that have been in the neighborhood for a really long time, especially community serving businesses.
Thank you so much. We had another question asking, what role does education equity play in the prevention aspect of advocacy?
Ooh, education equity. That's a fantastic question as well. I would say that it plays a huge role. One of the, so a little bit more about myself. I've taken an arc of many different roles, but I am a trained urban planner. And I was really fortunate because in the urban planning program I went to at UC San Diego, it did have a really large racial equity lens, which is really fantastic, but not all of them do. And so making sure that we are not only providing access to people to give them information about the really terrible histories that the US has been a part of is important, but also making sure that expertise, whether it's urban planning or something else, also has a racial equity lens, because pretty much everything that we do and everything that we're trying to move forward needs to have a racial equity lens in order for us to be equitable, in order for us to make Los Angeles better. And another thing I'd add to that too is it shouldn't be an afterthought. It needs to be the cornerstone of any policy or research that's done, to ensure that you're both honoring the histories, honoring it in terms of like recognizing it and coming to terms with it, but then also being able to learn from it, give reconciliation where it's needed, and then move forward effectively and equitably.
Fantastic. All right. I am just wrapping up my comment. Just proofreading really quickly, and then I think we can call everybody back in. Is everybody just about done?
Can give a reaction.
Yeah.
I know, I just want to add that I know some people had a couple of other questions. Clearly, we won't have time to answer everything right now in this moment, but we are very interested in keeping the conversation going. So I know Renee had mentioned the participate page. I'll be sending the link. We have some of the resources that our speakers have shared with us about the topics that they're discussing that might answer some of the questions, lingering questions that you might have. Along with we have videos and websites and articles that you can read. And there will also be a discussion section where you can continue to have these conversations and ask these questions. And for some of the questions that remained unanswered, I can make sure that we send that along to our speakers so that the responses can be posted in the participate discussion page. So I'll go ahead and send that link into the chat.
Awesome, perfect. All right, just submitted my comment to the public file, so feeling good. Great work, everybody. Hope everybody was able to rejoin us. I think, Lyric mentioned this before, but it's really important for during this advocacy work to make sure that you are working with a group of people, and also, of course, to take breaks. This is a long process, and making sure to take care of yourself. I think it's really great that we were able to all work on this together. It's nice to know that collectively, we are making some sort of impact and hopefully moving things forward with the Good Food Zone. All right. I think that just about wraps up our advocacy portion of today. And, now to the last segment. We've set aside some time to work on our staff lunches together. But before we start, let's review what should be going into the SAC lunches. So we've got a poll that's going to quiz you on what should be included in the SAC lunch. And this is also going to tell me if you read my many, many, many emails. So no stress. Okay. All right. Let's see. What do we have? Yay! Looks like people are reading instructions. I'm loving it. So each SAC lunch should include the following: 1 sandwich and 2 side snacks on the sandwich. Just a deli meat, ham, turkey, beef, whatever have you, and a light spread, either mayo or mustard. This is just the bare minimum of what our partners are requesting. So if there are any toppings that you'd like to include, lettuce, spinach, cheese, onions, tomatoes, pickles, whatever have you. You are more than welcome to include that as well. Listing those ingredients is making me a little hungry. But just remember to label your sack lunches. This helps take out the guesswork for our partners. If there are any dietary restrictions they have to be mindful of. And most importantly, no peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We want to be very mindful of any potential nut allergies. So in addition to the sandwiches, 2 of the following side snacks, a fruit, either banana, orange, or pre-washed apple, granola bar, fruit snacks, individually wrapped cheese, chips, etc. Any 2 of those side snacks would be great to include. Obviously, if you want to include more, you are more than welcome to. If you have not registered and received an email from me, please do not head off to the drop-off locations on your own. I think Mike sort of mentioned this earlier, but having too many lunches can present challenges of its own, whether that's storage, distribution, and we just really want to make sure that nothing goes to waste. There are future volunteer opportunities that you can take part of. So there's always a need, and you can sign up through that through the LA Works website. For the drop-off locations, Midnight Mission, they are actually open from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. It's just that drop-offs, anything dropped off before 11 a.m. will be used for same-day service. Apologies if there's for any confusion, but they do continue to accept sack lunches after 11 a.m. They will just be used for next day service. So yes, once again, please do not stress or worry if you're not able to make it 11 because it's already 10:30 at this moment. And the Hollywood Food Coalition, the drop-off times are between 12 and 2. Just if you arrive early, there will be nobody there to receive your sack lunches. So please wait until 12 to drop those off. I think that covers most of the information. Ooh, this one last poll question is how many total sack lunches do you think are being distributed today? 729, 1,843, or 3,287? Let's see. What are we thinking? 1,843. The answer is actually 3,437. So give yourselves a big pat on the back for that. Absolutely incredible number. Our partners at the Hollywood Food Coalition had to, send out feelers to find additional recipients given the outpouring of responses. So huge thank you to the team at Hollywood Food Coalition, and especially Bonnie for making that happen. And of course, thank you all for, stepping up and, making these sack lunches for us. I am going to stop talking and let you all focus on those sack lunches and maybe play some music in the background. Or I can just fill in the silence with occasional words of encouragement. We'll go ahead and call everyone back at maybe, what do you think?
Questions coming in. So
Perfect.
Fill the silence with your responses.
Wonderful.
So somebody asked if they wanted to add a mask and a hand wipe. Are they allowed to do that?
Yes, so you can, but just keep those separate from sack lunches. Don't include them inside the sack lunch, just keep those separate. But both organizations are more than happy to accept any additional items. But I think they just have sort of like different distribution streams for those. So if they need to include them, they have their own system.
Awesome. So that includes any kind of PPE, masks, gloves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so of course, with a lot of unhoused populations, which Midnight Mission works primarily with, access to cleaning supplies is always, hygiene items is always, a big ask. So it's always something that they need. Just make sure you, bring them separately.
Somebody else asked if we can throw cheese on the Sammy, or alternatively,
Yes.
a different question. Can we put other things in the sandwich, pickles or cheese or salami?
Yes. Like I mentioned, you are absolutely welcome to include other items in addition to sort of the ham, turkey, the deli meat, and the spread. This is just the minimum of what our partners are requesting. So anything that you'd like to add on top of that, you're free to, go crazy.
Somebody asked, is it okay if they put the sandwich and the 2 side snacks in a gallon-sized Ziploc bag?
Yes.
Great. You mentioned no peanut butter because of potential allergies. Does that also extend to including granola bars with nuts? Are those also not allowed?
Ooh, that is a good question. I'm going to say granola bars with nuts are okay because they are contained in their own little package. And so, it'll be easy to see if there is something that they need to be, nut allergies that they need to be concerned about. They can easily see that and remove it if needed. Hopefully, that's okay.
Somebody said I picked Midnight Mission, but should switch to Hollywood after 11. But you mentioned they can still drop things off at Midnight Mission after 11.
Yes. So Midnight Mission, they, I think the initial instructions that sent is that they'd ideally like to receive, sack lunches between 7 and 11 so that they can use the sack lunches for the same day service. However, they are open all the way until 11 p.m., which is a much wider window of time. So you have plenty of time to drop off. So yes, they do still accept drop-offs after 11 a.m.
Wonderful. We had somebody else ask if we want to continue donating sack lunches after today, what are the regular days/hours for drop-off for Midnight Mission?
Both the Midnight Mission and Hollywood Food Coalition have ongoing volunteer opportunities with LA Works. So you can sign up for future events. They occur regularly scheduled. I don't know them off the top of my head, but we will make sure to include that in in our follow-up email. There are also links to both volunteer opportunities on the participate page. I'm telling you, the participate page is where it's at. Lots of information, and wonderful useful links for you guys to reference.
Great. Two similar questions. Somebody asked, is pickup no contact / I'm assuming it's drop off also no contact?
Oh, yes, that's what I was going to talk about. Yes.
Somebody else asked, if we drop off after 11 at Midnight Mission, will there still be someone at the booth in the parking structure, or do we need to go into the building?
Yes. Thank you for these questions. That was the one thing I forgot to mention. So both of these drop-offs will be contactless. You are encouraged to stay in your car and do not get out. So there is a representative either from Midnight Mission or Hollywood Food Coalition will come to your car and pick those items up. The Midnight Mission, since they work with the unhoused population, who are extremely high risk for COVID, they are being especially careful and with their COVID precautions. They are actually not allowing any non-staff members to stay for longer than 5 minutes. So this is how they're very serious about their COVID precautions. So yes, it will be contactless, I guess is the short answer.
Somebody asked, as the 2 snacks, can we include a pack of fruit snacks and a side cookie?
Sounds good. Sounds delicious. Thank you.
And then somebody else asked, including a note of encouragement question.
Yes, absolutely. That's certainly welcome.
Great. And Carmen, special shout out, mentioned that they already dropped off their lunches this morning at Midnight Mission. Wonderful. And so they're also accepting clothes, especially coats and jacket.
Yes.
Anything helps. So if anyone else is also heading to Midnight Mission, and that's something that they're interested in, they're open to accepting clothing donations as well.
Yes. Once again, just keep those separate. The food and the other donations separate. I did also get an email from another volunteer who actually made a drop off last night at like 10 p.m. So that's just proof that Midnight Mission is in fact open until 11 p.m. So
somebody asked if they're taking clothing in at Hollywood Food Coalition. I don't know if we have the answer.
I don't know the answer to that. I may need to follow up on that. Search my emails to double check. Let's put a pin in that for the time being.
I think those are
pretty much covers it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as we're wrapping up and as people are working on making their sack lunches, I'm getting some messages from people and I just wanted to share them. Also as a way of thanking our panelists and guest speakers today for doing such a wonderful job. Priya said, just wanted to thank all of the panelists for sharing the information today, motivated to keep reading, learning, and educating in addition to volunteering and giving back. Thank you, Priya, for your kind words. We also think our panelists and our speakers are very great. I'm looking through the comments. Carla mentioned a great workshop filled with information and inspiration. Thank you so much. And I got to include my 90-year young mom in making the sandwiches, which made her feel good too. So
yay!
Mom, we appreciate your support.
That's amazing on so many levels.
Ali said, thank you so much for a wonderful workshop. Panelists were fantastic.
Yay.
Nisha said it was great. Ali said, we've loved the whole process. We are so glad that everyone is enjoying this workshop and that it was both enjoyable and educational. Kay Baird, sorry, said, yes, thank you to the panelists. Wonderful. The whole family has enjoyed the stream today. Somebody asked, I don't know if we have the answer to this, Renee, you might know. It's not really a serious question, but who is our youngest workshopper today?
Ooh, that is a good question.
Do you think you have the youngest workshopper in your house right now? Send their address, not their address. Send their age and we can maybe figure out who's our youngest panelist. We have 12 and 14-year-olds helping to make lunches. Those might be strong contenders for age. We have an age 5.
Ooh, single digits.
We have multiple 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds. Thank you all for including your families and making this a family affair. I think that's such a great example, and I think that's such a great president. Georgia's 3 years old, so we have
wow.
Really helping. And teenagers as well. We have 13 and 6-year-olds, 12-year-olds. This is fantastic. We love to hear it. We love that entire families are getting involved.
That's awesome. Speaking of families, I will plug our FAVE program through LA Works. I can't remember the exact acronym. Do you know what it is? But it's like a family advocacy volunteering program that we recently launched that sort of encourages families to work on community service projects together. We can also include the link when we post it.
Yes, we will. You will also find it on our participate page to plug it again. Yeah, no, somebody asked as well that there's been great links shared on this chat. Will we share them with everyone so we don't lose them?
Yes.
All of the resources shared today, all of the links, the statistics, all of that stuff you will find on our participate page for you to continue reading and watching and learning. But yes, Kina says, yes, thank you so much, Renee, and all the panelists. This was a great experience and I learned a lot.
Yay.
Thank you to you guys at LA Works. Bridget Smith said this was an amazing session. Thank you to all of the panelists. And Kenny said, thank you to all of you for organizing this workshop. I'm so glad I found it and I learned some great stuff that I previously had no idea about. I will definitely stay connected and learn more about the policy aspect. I'll make sure to tag you all as I document the sack lunch process today.
Yay!
And they're off to prepare the lunches. So thank you all.
Awesome.
We love that you're loving it.
These are such wonderful, happy, wholesome comments. Thank you guys so much. This is great. Whoever asked about the Hollywood Food Coalition and clothing drop-off, I'm looking into that. Still working on it.
Somebody asked, can we leave the meeting earlier? I enjoyed the session so much, but need to go soon. And yes, if you're done making your sack lunches and are ready to go drop off, especially at Midnight Mission, if you want to get there before 11, you're definitely free to go. We'll stay on for a little bit longer, just so people are kind of in community as they continue making their food, and we'll keep sharing these great comments. Jennifer said, thank you for your time. I love the session. Grace said, thank you so much for organizing this virtual workshop. Appreciate the information and inspiration. What an awesome way to honor MLK Jr. Yeah, and also kind of while we're still here, I know that somebody mentioned earlier that they'd be documenting their process and tagging us on social media. Please do so as well. I think we have the @s on here that you can tag us. We want to see your pictures of you dropping off your sack lunches or preparing them, whatever stage of the process you're at right now. Please definitely share and tag us. It's so much fun to see. This is a great question. Somebody asked, really love this workshop. How did the service day project function before COVID in person?
This is a great question. I'm fairly new. I think we're both fairly new we were not here for last year's MLK Day. But from our understanding, it's obviously in person. And I think last year the project was basically like a beautification beautification of a local middle school. And yeah, it was a full day event. There were, guest speakers, a keynote speaker of some sort. I don't remember, I don't know all the details, but I think last year we had close to 2,000 people join us. And so it was, it's one of our, big days of service events. And obviously, given COVID, we had to adapt this year. Yes.
I'm looking through the comments and questions. So our Claire, who's fantastic and managing our social media, also shared that if you check our Instagram and look at our stories, we have a whole day documented. Just look for 2020 MLK Day in the highlights, and also on our feed. You'll be able to see the befores and what it used to look like before we transition into virtual. I think that's it for questions. Angel said, thank you all for the wonderful work you do. You are an inspiration. You all are our inspiration. And thank you so much for your commitment to volunteering and for staying engaged, even in a very difficult season, very difficult time. You make LA a better place with all the work that you do. And so we really appreciate you for it. Oh, Christina said, thank you so much for this event. It was really fun preparing the sack lunches and I want to volunteer again next year. We Look forward to having you again. That would be fantastic.
And hopefully in person. Whoever asked the question about bringing clothing to Hollywood Food Coalition, if you could send me an email so that I can follow up with you. I'm just waiting for a response now from Bonnie, one of the organizers at Hollywood Food Coalition, just so that I can get back to you. But I think given the time, we can go ahead and, wrap things up. And I will just give my little closing spiel. Just wanted to thank you all so very much for all the great work that you guys are doing for this wonderful MLK Day of Service. I think we covered a lot of great topics today, and it's really important that to recognize the ways that structural and systemic racism impact food access. What Ronell brought up and Lyric brought up about redlining and the existing policies and historical systems that continue to have an impact on these social issues today. So not only it's recognizing the big picture, but also participating in volunteer direct impact. So I think we've done a lot of great work today. So thank you for all being here, for your willingness to learn, and for getting involved with your local community. But of course, the work doesn't stop here. As we mentioned, this is a sort of ongoing process. If you want to keep learning, keep volunteering, or keep sharing your lovely thoughts or any additional resources or ideas, we recommend you to go to where the participate page. Yes, like we said, there are discussion boards as well as additional resources for everyone to and learn more about. And also, another reason you might want to visit the participate page is that if you want a chance to win 2 United Airlines tickets, good for anywhere in the country, through the end of 2021, you can head to the MLK course page and participate to share your experience and be entered in our drawing. So 2 airline tickets, good for anywhere, good until the end of 2021. Let's give a final round of applause to all of our speakers today. Ronell, Cameron, Mike, Lyric. None of this would be possible without the wisdom of their work. And to all of you guys as well, you guys did great things today. So thank you everyone for joining. That wraps up our virtual workshop, and have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us.